Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. I was going to get married in 4 months to my childhood friend. We were a group of four, me and my sister, him and his brother. My fiance was the oldest of the group. Then came me, then his brother, then my sister. We were neighbors and spent all our time together. We went to the same schools and then to the same college. My fiance and I started dating when we were in college. Our parents were really happy to hear about it. My sister had a crush on my fiance's brother, but I wasn't aware if she had told him or not. She was usually very bold and talkative, so I was pretty sure she would do it. Back then, I asked her what had happened, but she told me nothing. When I told my family that he had proposed, they were thrilled. They couldn't stop talking about it. My sister was excited for me, so now, when they told me that they may not be able to make it, I was confused. I asked them what they were talking about. It wasn't just one person who refused. All of them were trying to back out. I was angry at them. I asked them if this was some type of stupid prank because it wasn't funny. I, their daughter, was getting married and wanted them there. I was thinking about what could have possibly changed their minds. They weren't giving me a reason. My sister was supposed to be my maid of honor. My fiance's best friend was his best man. My family wasn't going to miss one but two weddings. A few days after my fiance proposed to me, his brother proposed to his girlfriend of 3 years. We decided that it would be amazing if we got married together. We could reach another milestone together. So the four of us met up, me, my fiance, his brother, and his fiance, and we all agreed to plan it together. His brother's fiance was a very bubbly person. She was excited too. We decided to have a beach wedding and everything was going according to plan. All of our families were elated. We decided to have a huge buffet with something to all of our family's liking. Then, out of nowhere, 4 months before the wedding, my parents called me up and tried to back off. My sister refused to be my maid of honor. I gave them all a good talk and forced them to come. I was pissed at my parents, and everybody knew that. They tried to apologize to me. I told them if my sister didn't want to be my maid of honor, she should have told me beforehand. I was like, fine, I'll ask somebody else. My best friend was already a bridesmaid, so I asked if she could move up the line. She was jumping with excitement. Now, the day of my wedding had come. My family had come to me before to apologize in person, saying they should have handled this in a better way. I tried to make them spill what changed their mind, but they said it was stupid and to let it go. I still wasn't talking to my sister. She was supposed to support me through all of this. We had made so many plans when we were young that this felt like a betrayal. She still didn't want to come to the wedding. I didn't have time to deal with her, so I asked my parents to do it. Then she showed up. She came up to my room while I was dressing and apologized to me. I was in a happy mood, so I told her that it was okay and that I was happy that she was there. The ceremony was perfect. My husband and I were buzzing with joy. The other couple felt the same. We were at the reception now. We had only invited close family and friends, so there were 60 people there in total. Our families were making beautiful toasts for us. My sister hadn't spoken yet, and I wasn't sure if she was going to. I didn't want to force her. It was enough that she was here. Time passed and we were dancing when all of a sudden the music stopped and my sister was on the stage. She cleared her throat and spoke into the mic. She looked drunk, and it wasn't even that late. She said she wanted to toast her beautiful sister and her husband. Everybody cheered. She gave a beautiful speech wishing us the best. We were so happy. I could see my parents smiling too. Then she went on to say that she wanted to toast the other couple too. My husband's brother shouted, "Go ahead!" At first, she spoke about him, the other groom, telling everybody how we grew up together. Then she started crying. Our parents freaked out and tried to get her off the stage, but she said no, she wanted to talk. She continued saying that she had a crush on him. And even I was a bit nervous then. It couldn't be that she still liked him, right? She wanted to continue, but she stuttered and broke down, telling my husband's brother that she loved him and asked him why he didn't love her back. The other bride looked shocked. The other groom stood there stupefied. She was refusing to get off the stage, so I asked my husband's best man to just carry her out and to get the mic out of her hands. Too late, though. The damage had already been done. None of us were expecting this. My cousin, who was the host, took over, saying, "Hey, what's a wedding without any drama?" He tried to cool everyone off and started the music again. I wanted to go after my sister, but I knew everybody was watching. We walked up to the other bride and groom and we immediately apologized for what had happened. I could tell both of them were startled. She was a good sport, though, and laughed it off, saying, "Exes." We awkwardly laughed. The rest of the evening went smoothly with no other incidents. My sister had passed out in one of the rooms above. The next day, when we woke up, my parents and sister went up to my husband's brother and his wife. I could tell my sister was distraught and embarrassed. She apologized to them and they had an awkward conversation. Oh well. She came up to me and apologized. I told her we would talk later. She nodded her head and went on her way. My parents were embarrassed and took me aside and told me this is why they were hesitant to come, apologized and walked off. So much happened the other day, but everything went well in the end. I'll update you soon on what's going on with my sister. Update 1. A few days later, I spoke to my sister. We had a long talk. I asked her to be honest with me. She said that she was in love with my husband's brother. She had confessed to him multiple times and he had rejected her. She had asked him to at least try, just on one date, but he refused. So when she found out he was getting married, she lost it. She told me that she had tried to go out with others but was still stuck with him. I wasn't aware of any of this. I asked why he hadn't told me, and she said that it didn't matter if she had told me because his answer would still be the same. When she found out he was engaged, she felt broken. Then later, when she came to know that both weddings were going to happen together, she had a breakdown. She was still in love with him, and now she couldn't even avoid him. I told her that if she had told me this was the case, I wouldn't have agreed to get married together. I would have kept separate days and would have done my best to make her more comfortable. She disagreed, saying he would have still been there with his fiance. I was sad for my sister. Before, I had thought that it was some old crush from years ago. I comforted her, telling her to take her time and that I would help her move on. She hugged me tightly and we just sat there like that for some time. When I went home, I explained the situation to my husband and he felt guilty. He said he didn't know. He would have never put her in that position intentionally. We both decided to help her in whatever way we could. In the future, there would be more such events, and we wanted her to be carefree and happy. I get why OP feels guilty, but she is NTA. I feel bad for the other bride, though. Hope she's doing well. Hope all of you do well. The sister is the a-hole. He had rejected her so many times. No matter how heartbroken you are, it doesn't give you the right to crash somebody else's wedding. She needs to get herself together. I feel OP's parents are at fault here. They knew what was going on, and they should have informed her. So many things could have been done to prevent this situation from occurring. I hope both couples move past this. It was both of their weddings on that day. I get that the other groom didn't like her sister, but damn, he could have gone out with her on one date and then rejected her. Maybe it would have gone better. Next story. Okay, so before I start, I feel like a bit of backstory is required here. So I suffer from bipolar disorder and my husband is a recovered alcoholic. We got together when we were at our complete lowest. I was going through my first manic episode and he was in the depth of his addiction. We were a mess, but after multiple rehab and psych ward visits, we are now 35 and he is 10 years sober and I am medicated and stable. So, although we're both in a very good place in our lives, we do have a zero alcohol in the home for obvious reasons. My meds, under no circumstances, cannot mix with alcohol, and my husband obviously can't drink it, so we prefer to keep it away from our home to prevent the risk of him relapsing. This being said, we obviously don't care if people around us drink or if we go to events with alcohol. It's just not in our homes. Now, for Christmas, my parents usually host, but for the past 3 years, one of my siblings has hosted instead. There are 5 of us. This year, I was asked to host and was fully up to this. We have a beautiful home and can afford to cater to everyone. Now, I did say from the get-go that I don't mind hosting, but there cannot be any alcohol in my home. And if this was going to be a problem, then we should just do it elsewhere, as I don't want to risk anything. This may be dramatic, but when you live with a recovered addict, you have to be as cautious as possible. No one said anything, and I assumed everything was fine and that they were all okay with the no alcohol rule. When Friday rolled around, my sister called me asking if it was okay if she brought a bottle of Prosecco for her and her husband, and that she knows I'm strict about the no alcohol rule, but it would just be for her and her husband. I told her no, and we ended up getting into a huge fight. I told her that if she wanted alcohol, then we could host at her place, but by no circumstances was there being alcohol brought under my roof. She said I was being dramatic. After speaking to my mom, she said it was too last minute to change arrangements, and is one day of alcohol really going to affect me much? I personally feel like my sister brought it up so last minute to try and force me into a corner, but I just said that if they want alcohol, they're not coming into my home with it. They ended up not coming for Christmas and held it at my sister's without inviting us. I had a lovely, quiet Christmas with my husband, but now none of my siblings, parents, and grandparents will speak to me. I felt as though I didn't do anything wrong, but I'm starting to think maybe I should have offered to pay to eat out or something instead so everyone could have a drink. Also, before anyone asks, my husband was also against any alcohol in the home and called my sister himself to explain why it's so important to us, and mine and my husband's well-being is my personal top priority in the situation. So AITA update. Okay, so firstly, thank you for all the love. This was so unexpected, so love you all. Secondly, I'm going to answer a few things I've seen floating around here so it's easier. To start, I've seen many people ask if we're comfortable with alcohol out and about. Why is it any different in our home? I do apologize if I worded it weirdly and hard to understand, but when I mean we're okay with it, I more mean alcohol is a part of life and something that can't be avoided. My husband has learned to become acceptant of this, but can still sometimes get a bit, I don't know, upset around it. He never voices this, but has opened up a few things about how he hates his addiction and how he feels so overwhelmed around alcohol. So even though he is fine and fully sober, there's always going to be that little voice there for him. And if I can make sure he doesn't feel this way in our home, then I'll do everything I can to do so. Secondly, as I mentioned earlier, I am bipolar, and anyone with bipolar will know that although medication controls the episode, they don't stop completely. Therefore, even on my meds, I can still act a little impulsive and don't fully trust myself not to drink. Drinking on my medication basically fully cancels out the meds, and the last time I drank, medicated, I ended up in the worst manic episode of my life and was hospitalized for almost a year. Lastly, it's our home, and these are the rules for our home that we feel comfortable with. Our home is our safe place, and one place in the whole world we can have full control over and feel the safest in. Maybe in the future we will be able to welcome it, maybe that day will never come, but for now, we definitely are keeping the no alcohol rule. Secondly, people have asked, why did I ever offer to host? Well, this is because I love my family so much and just wanted to be able to cater for them. But like I said, to them, I did understand if they didn't feel comfortable with my house rules. and that we can host elsewhere. I also told them this around mid-November, so they did have time to tell me if they wanted to change arrangements, which not a single soul protested against this. Thirdly, I have decided to go low contact with my family, as many people have opened my eyes and made me see how they don't respect me or my boundaries to do something like this. The post may have seemed obvious that I wasn't DAH, but not to pull the mental illness card. When you do grow up being unwell, you do tend to question yourself and just feel as though an unbiased opinion was the best way to go about this, rather than sitting on my own questioning if I was being a bitch, lol. Also, thank you to everyone who has shared their own stories or loved one's stories with addiction. So proud of each and every one of you. And you all have a special place in my heart, especially over the holiday season. Anyway, I do appreciate everyone's perspective on this, and thank you all for the kind wishes and words, really. Hope everyone had a great Christmas and has an amazing 2023. You have to be pretty sick to insist on bringing alcohol to an alcoholic's home. NTA. Absolutely NTA. Your siblings need to understand the seriousness of the situation. And quite honestly, if they can't go a single day without alcohol, then it's a pretty poor show. Be strong. You're 100% in the right. Next story. I, 25, female, recently got engaged a few months back, and my fiance, Carter, 26, male, and I are deep in the wedding planning stages. We were both at a family dinner party this past weekend when people asked us how the wedding planning was going, particularly my cousin Danny, 32, female. Carter and I have been very fortunate to be in a situation where we can plan our dream wedding and are able to pay the majority of it ourselves and some help from our parents. When we went into the details of how we want it to be a big wedding to invite a lot of friends and family we haven't seen in years due to COVID, Danny immediately made comments about how we're spending twice her income for one day no one else cares about, and many other disrespectful comments throughout the night about our plans. For some context, Danny was pursuing a college degree that was completely financed by my parents as her mother could not afford it. But in her last year, she was expelled due to getting caught plagiarizing on a draft of her thesis. She hid this from my parents for a whole year, but still continued to accept their monthly checks that were meant to be for her tuition, and instead pocketed the money, around $30,000. This basically has limited her opportunities in the job market as she never graduated, and her then boyfriend left her a year ago after discovering what she had done and didn't want to be with someone that had been lying about their college degree and income. After her initial comment, she then went on to say how if my fiance and I are able to spend all this money on our wedding, we could put the money to better use by helping her out instead of she wants to pursue community college courses to finish her degree. I said absolutely not, and this caused a huge argument because she kept saying how it's not fair that I'm rubbing it in about how I got the fancy wedding and fancy fiance, and she is struggling to pay her bills after her ex kicked her out. I do sympathize with her situation, but she literally cheated, got kicked out of school as a consequence, proceeded to lie and steal $30,000 from my parents, and then lost her boyfriend for hiding all this from him for 2 years. The reason Danny is in this situation is her own fault, and I told her this exactly in front of everyone at dinner. Now, our grandmother is calling me nonstop, saying how I'm being selfish and inconsiderate when my cousin is clearly going through a really hard stage in her life, and family doesn't humiliate one another. Basically, she now is siding with my cousin, saying maybe I could scale down my wedding a bit to not rub it in her face. It's kind of always been like this with my grandmother growing up because Danny is the firstborn grandchild that came after many miscarriages and was always favored over my siblings and I. So, AITA, or I guess more realistically, was I being a bad person for the way I responded to Danny? NTA. Danny is an adult and more than responsible for facing the consequences of her own actions. She very well could have not cheated on a thesis, might I add, and finished her degree. Then she wouldn't be broke, and she didn't have to lie to her boyfriend about the situation, but she did. And that's why she's single. You're completely right. It is her own fault, and she needs a wake up call. If Grandma cares about Danny so much, why can't she pay for her community college payments then? Do yourself a favor and uninvite both Danny and your grandmother from your wedding. You're doing nothing wrong and deserve to enjoy this event however you and your fiance choose to do so. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.